What is up, guys? It is Quinn here, back with another video. We are one day away from getting the full slate of Sunday games. Super excited to have football back in our lives. If you guys are new to this channel, basically every single Saturday morning, I'll be breaking down all the potential injuries in the Sunday and Monday games. So I'll be going through the players who maybe have been banged up, but are announced that they're good to go. I'll be going through the players who are questionable, doubtful, and then the players who have already been announced as out. Just kind of maybe talk through the injury a little bit, go through whether or not they've been practicing, but more so just talk about how I would gauge them for fantasy, right? Like if a guy is doubtful, I'd maybe recommend starting someone else on that roster. If they're questionable, but I think they're going to be limited, maybe I'd advise against starting them. So just stuff like that. I'll be putting this out every single Saturday morning. If you guys are watching and you're enjoying the content, just do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll be putting out content all season long, but let's just jump right into it. So we're going to be starting off with the players that are good to go. And a guy that kind of flew under the radar on the injury report, Christian McCaffrey. I bet CMAC owners are very, very happy that he is good to go. He was dealing with a shin injury, never really seemed like he was in jeopardy of missing any time. So CMC, going to be good to go. Lock him up in your starting lineup. The other player who suffered an injury in preseason, Deontay Johnson, tweaked his shoulder a little bit. He is also good to go. Came out, said he would be playing Sunday. So good news for Deontay Johnson. He's someone I have a lot of shares of. So excited to see him out on the field. Now we're going to be shifting over to the players who are currently questionable for week one. We're going to start it off with Michael Thomas. He still has an injury designation on that ankle. If I had to bet, I think he'd be playing in this game. It seems like he's logged some practices. He was good to go, through portions of camp. So I think it's something where he may stick on, the injury report every single week, but I think he will be good to go. And he is someone where if we're not hearing like he's out of snap count, he's limited, he is someone I would trust in my lineup this week. Another guy, I think in the same matchup, Drake London, he is still dealing with that knee injury that he suffered in the preseason. He's another guy where if we're not hearing a negative report, he's someone who I'd expect to play and is also someone that I'd feel decent starting in my lineup. Maybe you're not overly excited plugging him in there, but if you're in a deeper league, maybe a ton of flex positions, I totally think he is startable this week for fantasy football. A guy who kind of has a recent injury is George Kittle. This groin injury kind of popped up out of nowhere. I believe he suffered this earlier in the week in practice. For me, I am not super optimistic that George Kittle is going to play this week. I've been seeing some fantasy doctors come out. They don't seem to be super, optimistic that he will give it a go this Sunday. Maybe better off in the long term for him to kind of, just sit this one out, recover. He's listed as questionable, didn't get a doubtful designation. I do not believe he has practiced the last few days. So if he is on your roster and he's playing, I feel like you got to just throw him in there. There's no shot you have a better option on your bench unless you're in like a 4-team league. If he's not playing, or maybe you don't have a backup tight end, just something to, kind of get ready for. Maybe scout out that waiver wire, pick up a backup, because I do think there's a decent chance he does not play this week. But if he plays, I think you fire him up and you hope for the best. One guy who may not be super fantasy relevant, but maybe he is in deeper leagues, Jacoby Myers, questionable with a knee injury. I just hope he plays so we can get a decent kind of idea of what this Patriots passing attack is going to look like. You've got a lot of wide receivers there. We're not really sure which ones are going to break out. Is it Myers? Is it Parker? Is Bourne still going to have a role? So I just think for fantasy purposes, clarity, I just want to see all those guys out there so we can see how this offense really does run. Probably one of the more higher profile injuries. We've got J.K. Dobbins questionable with that knee. He's coming back from the ACL. I don't know if he's going to play. I would probably lean towards him not playing, or playing but maybe being very, very limited. I would feel very skeptical starting J.K. Dobbins this week, like barring, the Ravens coming out and saying he's 100%, he's going to have his full workload. Like unless that happens, I just don't want him in my lineup. We've seen slow starts from ACLs. I mean, just look back to Saquon last year, struggled the first 2 weeks, then really picked it up week 3, week 4. So the fact that we don't even know he's playing yet, I just can't imagine him going from being questionable, coming off that ACL tear, to all of a sudden having his, normal workload that we'd be expecting later on. So unless you really, really need to start him, he is someone where even if he's active, I would like to have a different option in there and just let him, prove he can get back to that normal workload before you do play him in your lineup. Zach Ertz has been dealing with a calf injury. He is questionable to go on Sunday. is kind of in a weird spot here because he's in that like tier of tight end where you do trust him in your lineup, but do you trust him in your lineup when he's injured more than maybe like a waiver wire guy, a tight end 14, a tight end 15? It's kind of a tough call here. I think if he's active and it doesn't seem like he's super restricted, I still think he's someone you could plug into your tight end spot, but he's probably more of like a fringe tight end one, whereas I think he's normally sitting at around like the tight end 10 spot. So just something to keep in mind there. Then we get into the Sunday night football game where we have Chris Godwin, who is obviously also dealing with a return from his ACL tear. For Chris Godwin, I kind of have similar advice to J.K. Dobbins here. I think Chris Godwin probably has a better chance of playing in this game. We also see Russell Gage here dealing with a hamstring. Kind of should just probably combine those two together because I do think they are connected. I would expect Russell Gage to play in this game. And then I think that kind of worsens Chris Godwin's, week one fantasy outlook because I think Chris Godwin can play in this game. The reports have been great. He's been practicing. He hasn't been like a full participant. He's had the non-contact jersey on for a few practices here. I think if the Bucs want him to play, I think he's ready to play. I think they may just rest him because this is obviously like week one isn't going to be make or break for the Bucs. They're probably pretty confident they're going to be a playoff team. So you want him 100% later on. So I would not be shocked if he is out. And I would also not be shocked that if he does play, it's not going to be his normal workload. If Gage is going, you've got a lineup with Mike Evans. You have Russell Gage. You have Julio Jones. You don't need Chris Godwin to be this stud from week one. So unless you really, really need to start him, he is someone I would kind of avoid, putting in my lineup. I think I'm going to be forced to start him in a league if he does play because I just happen to have a roster with like DeAndre Hopkins. I think I have like Breece Hall thrown in there. I may be getting some leagues mixed up. But basically, I have like injuries or, slow starters on my roster, and then it's like a 3 flex spot. So if you're in that situation, I guess you throw him in there, but I would temper my expectations early on in the season. Talked about Russell Gage, that hamstring, I'd expect him to go. If he doesn't, then it probably makes Chris Godwin a little bit more interesting. Could see a bigger role out of him, but kind of just a situation we have to wait and see. Then we have Kenneth Walker, who I guess is dealing with some sort of like hernia, sports hernia. Pete Carroll gives these press conferences talking about Kenneth Walker, and it's like this like medical mystery he's talking about. He's all over the place with it. He has missed practice on Thursday and Friday. He's listed as questionable. I would be pretty surprised if he does play. I believe they have the Monday night game against the Broncos. Yeah, that is correct. And so Kenneth Walker, I'm not expecting him to play. If he doesn't play, obviously that is a boost to Rashad Penny. I think it makes him a lot more startable. And then we kind of just have to evaluate this thing. I would not be surprised if Kenneth Walker is like missing weeks and weeks and weeks. It just kind of seems like one of these situations where we're not getting a clear answer on what the injury really is. And just kind of a weird spot here for Walker. So hopefully he gets back soon, but something that I wouldn't, be shocked if it starts to linger here. Now moving on to the one player who is listed as doubtful. That is Allen Lazard. I believe he injured his ankle sometime at practice. Obviously not ideal. Personally, I was never really big on Allen Lazard. I didn't think he was going to break out as the wide receiver one, but I would have liked to see it. If it was going to happen, I would like to see it. He will likely not be playing here in week one. You may now think, I better start Christian Watson. I better start Romeo Doubs. I better start Sammy Watkins. I would just wait it out. I want to see what this usage is going to look like. I want to see who's out there. This is not a spot where I'm trying to force one of those guys in my lineup. Like if you're in a normal 12-team league and you have 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex, you should not even be thinking about starting a Sammy Watkins or a Romeo Doubs or a Christian Watson. Maybe one of those guys breaks out, kind of establishes themselves as one of Aaron Rodgers' favorite targets. That would be great, but we got to wait and see it first. Don't be trying to throw those guys in your lineup. And then a few players who have already been, told that they are out. Zach Wilson, we found this out a few days ago. Seems like he's going to miss at least a few weeks with that knee injury. It was weird. It was like he had a practice where we were either going to see if he was going to play on Sunday or he wasn't going to play on Sunday. Then in that practice, they're like, yeah, he's out for a few more weeks. So unfortunate stuff there for Zach Wilson. I don't think it's a massive downgrade for these weapons going to Joe Flacco. It truly may not even be a downgrade at all. So I still feel decent about Elijah Moore. Everyone else in that offense I'm kind of waiting for. Breece Hall could start him, but, he's going to be in a split with Michael Carter early on. So he's going to be a guy who's backloading his points. Another guy who is out is Rondale Moore with a hamstring injury. You've got D-Hop on suspension, Rondell Moore out with that hamstring. Kind of seems like A.J. Green is semi-viable as a starter now. Didn't really think I'd be saying that, but you could do worse than A.J. Green in a flex, especially in a league with like 2, 3, 4 flexes. Don't think A.J. Green would be the worst guy to slide in there. And then the final player who is out, we have Michael Gallup. No surprise here. Jerry Jones came out, basically said if it was the Super Bowl, he would be good to play. Obviously, this is not the Super Bowl, so they're going to let him rest. Maybe we'll see him back, week 2, week 3. We will see, but he will not be playing on Sunday Night Football against the Buccaneers. We'll see if, the other dude who tore his Achilles, Chris Godwin, suits up. So those are all the injuries heading into week 1 of the NFL season. Fortunately, not a ton of huge names. Obviously, there are some key pieces there. Chris Godwin, Michael Gallup, probably missing a few. Let me scroll up here. Dobbins, Ertz, Kittle, Michael Thomas, Drake London. All right, maybe I'm wrong. There are some big names here, but it's not a crazy long list. Hopefully, we're not having these crazy injury, reports. I remember last year, I'd be scrolling through pages and it's just big name, big name, big name, especially at the running back position. It was brutal. Hopefully, we don't have that repeat this year. But so those are going to be the injuries. If you guys did enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate you guys stopping by, and I will see you guys in the next one.